It's morning of December 16th, 2021. I'm in Tacoma, 61 years old. My name is Matt Creary, as most of the people I send this to already know. I'm not asking you for any money or proximity. I don't want you to come over. I don't want you to physically help me. I'm just asking you in your wisdom to consider seeing this video and listening to it and thinking about it, because I've tried to organize some things that are on my mind in a way that might be helpful to you if you organize similar things and answering some questions. It's hard to avoid some of the issues that are in play, climate change, COVID-19, for example. I considered putting this into a letter, and I might have to remake this video at a later date. But because of the condition that my arms are in from carpal tunnels, it's not practical for me to put this into a letter. Most of the videos in my YouTube channel have auto translation, closed caption function. And even if you're not deaf, I suspect it would be helpful to click the CC button to get the scrolling text. Now, I've collected my thoughts into a script. That doesn't mean I'm not going to have to pause to think about how I say the procession of things and of importance on the roster. It's also early in the morning, but late enough that my talking won't disturb my neighbors. I have largely discontinued going into Seattle, partly because of the Oh My Crown outbreak, but also because I've come to the conclusion that it's a dialectical dystopia driven by a left who are driven absolutely berserk at the idea that somebody else's life matters. The idea just rankles in their psyche. They chew the carpet. They go crazy at the thought that somebody is promoting the idea that their life matters. Um, we're living in dark times, but Tolkien once said, all those who live in dark times wish that they didn't. There's nothing that I can do to change that we're entering into some very dark times, but there may be something I can do to help mitigate the misfortune of being totally at sea as to what it is that is going on and what has led to this. When we when we fought the Axis in World War II, I know that many people feel that civilization has to move beyond fighting to resolve things. That's what this tape is about. There's a film coming out that I consider very irresponsible from the Matrix people, which is all full of bullets flying and AK-47s. I think it's an irresponsible nightmare. I don't like Hollywood. I don't like what Hollywood is doing. Hollywood is part of the way the Axis reasserted their power. But people didn't want to fight the Axis back then either. The problem is that the defeated didn't stay defeated, but a minimum understanding of what was happening was to their disadvantage. What we're going through today has never happened militarily before. I'd like to explain the cruel disadvantage I'm in because it's a focal point for the truth about what's happening. People look for closure in explanations, and sometimes that's good because the problems that are going on seem to never stop, which is what accounts for the popularity of the book Mein Kampf in Germany, was the way that he posed things as an answer to a constant struggle. People need closure to get away from problems never stopping. And so we have to address certain kinds of things that are happening in such a way that give us the minimum understanding, that put the um, mercenaries among us at a disadvantage because it makes it possible to understand them. And clearly, just vying with people's opinions is broken down into such chaos that people are being driven out of the realm of expressing their opinions. Some opinions count for something, and the struggle is not in vain. Global warming is an example. Joe Biden was found out in a lie. There's a lawsuit going on about it. Joe Biden's lie was that he said that he was legally bound to lease offshore uh, territory for oil extraction for already glutted atmospheric carbon pollution. And he wasn't legally bound. What it turned out was it was going to generate a lot of money. Well, it's a carbon bomb that he has agreed to. We can't afford it. We're seeing huge tornado clusters already, and it's only begun. The slow response of the climate system has only begun to fight back against human foolishness. I could trace back the struggle against the industries of death in our ecocide a long ways. And the people who I have to discuss today are people who didn't contribute in any meaningful way to trying to help. They elected Reagan, they supported Reagan, and his mighty ideas of mighty engines of ecology was at the bottom of a list, and that all Americans needed a piece of the expanding pie of, as he put it, of disastrous investment in disastrous, unsustainable industries. And what did Joe Biden get for this sleight of hand, for this deception, for this backstep, for this betrayal? I mean, I support him over Trump, don't get me wrong, but what did he get? He got Joe Manchin exiting stage right like a little girl who felt, you like, how do you put it? You said something mean about her, so she throws a temper tantrum and exits stage right. That's what he didn't even get a good deal on the destruction of the earth from his colleagues. So we have to look at a few of the issues that I ask your wisdom about because they pertain to the situation I'm in, that I think is partly a grinding focal point in the overall problem. I can't summon any leverage. I was warned against things like this video by someone who said throwing pebbles in still pools make a great deal of ripples. Well, the truth is that the people who I'm dealing with have the power to throw boulders in any pool at all to smash the little pebble that I that I bounce in the water. And Paul McCartney, a lot of what I'm going to talk about are the cold-blooded laws of Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney is a bitter and evil man, and he's a magnet for unfeeling acts. I don't know how it's possible that somebody could write these sensitive romantic love songs, but he does them only for himself and to make money. He may see me as a danger to his reputation, and he seems to be playing a game of brinkmanship. The more evil he becomes, the more I'm in the danger to his reputation, and he wonders how much fun it would be to destroy his own reputation by getting more and more evil towards me. And he thinks, I believe, that he will never burn out his evil reputation for good. So he can do anything he wants to me. And that this little pebble I throw in the pool is an invitation for him to do even more evil acts. Look at the way the clinic and UW Dialectical have burned me and branded me with the claim that I'm a paranoid schizophrenic. Pause on that a minute. Think about that. Mac, old Mac, your friend, is a paranoid schizophrenic. You've thought it yourself. I used to talk to you about the AIDS experiment they ran on Mount Desert Island. And then you roll your eyes. Oh, beautiful mind. Poor old Mac, paranoid schizophrenic, right? Remember, think about that for a second. I'll tell you the truth about this calling of medicine that brands me a paranoid schizophrenic. They'll say I'm in denial. I'll tell you the truth about it. If you were to tell a cop, don't taser somebody who they feel is resisting arrest, they'd laugh. What do you mean? This is tools of my trade. If you told a stud in one of the vaudeville sex acts behind the curtains of a place like Jack Ruby's Carousel, you not or to wear rubber. Go ahead, please wear a rubber when you're having sex with these actresses. He'd be like, "Who are you?" Telling a doctor of medicine in UW or the clinic not to brand somebody paranoid schizophrenic for having views that are actually supportable when you refuse to look at the evidence is like telling a stud to wear rubber or a cop not to use a taser. Medical malpractice is one of the tools of their trade. It was the medical people who poisoned me in mouth as an early warning to the release of COVID-19 who were branding me a paranoid schizophrenic. Just the way the people who ran the AIDS operation on Mount Desert Island were the ones who branded me a paranoid schizophrenic. Now let's get to Paul McCartney and his ambassador, Peter Gabriel. They were working with Ian Wattmaker. Who was he? He was a neurological researcher who poisoned me with a nerve agent. His father was an Attica State Prison psychiatrist to whom I was delivered after my parents made some kind of contract with the Union and the military and the CIA to have me born. I was delivered to the house as a 9-year-old of a psychiatrist for the Attica State Prison System in the boonies of Pittsburgh. This didn't just happen. It's completely ridiculous. And Ian Wattmaker to say it just happened. And Ian Wattmaker said, and they even said in the letters to me from the Israelis, just because you're paranoid does not mean we are not out to get you. And I watch up neuroplasms and deafness. Who's going to believe them? You are, because you're scared of what I have to say. So you think about that a minute. That's the truth about this paranoid schizophrenia. Now, the script describes the whole idea of promoting the sexual jungle. You know in your heart, I think by now, that the reason why American civilization and global civilization is problematic is because of the non-cooperation of the fascists. And some of this non-cooperation boils down to rivalries over girls. Now, I see in places like Tacoma where the military is being trained and human trafficking operations with dogs and stuff. I mean, the women of the third world that they go after are really in piteous condition. And went on during the Vietnam War. We see in the movies the horrible things that were done to prisoners of war and so forth in Vietnam, but they sort of avoid the sexual brutality of the. You can read about it in veterans' memoirs if you can get your hands on some of them. Some of them are obscure, but I've also done anthropology of the concentration camps, reading people who were treated as Switzerland from the concentration camps. Man's inhumanity to man needs to be carefully scrutinized in order to bring a stop to it. In our country, um, zapped the Kennedys right between the eyes. I mean, Bobby Kennedy was a fair minded, beautiful boy. Why would they do that? Well, to desensitize. Ian Wadmaker had this statement. He'd say, "Idea has struck the mind." You see, when Lennon, his partner, sang, he said they blew his mind out in a car. Okay, so you have the idea striking the mind, blowing the mind out. The idea was to make people afraid to think, so there's a cause and effect reaction between civilization and being killed. Okay, so this is what they did. When I say it's militarily unheard of what's going on, is never before has a leader faked his own death in order to get his following to go along with him. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I know that that's what Lennon did. I'll talk about it in my other videos in my YouTube channel too. But if you look at the situation with me in Seattle, no one is allowed to care about me. The corrections authorities have summoned people with HIV to justify the operation on Mount Desert Island, and they call COVID-19 part of the momentum of what they're doing. Okay, so these are serious, serious perverts who take issue with being called perverts. They've done things to me sexually that are absolutely horrible, and they have tried to force me to convert to homosexuality. They tried to twist, and they've kept me in isolation for 30 years with this obsession coming out of the museum syndicate of making money off of me through scrutinies for Yoko Ono's revenge. And her evil, her terrorism is so abnormal that nobody dares even think about the way they killed Circe Kennedy, for example, the way they raped the girl who taught me sign language, for example. But these are just for examples. The way they went about setting up COVID 19 is the big one. And my legacy proves it. Nobody's looking into it. So this is all being underwritten by the people who refuse to negotiate on the topic of paranoid schizophrenia. And it's important to understand that part of the reason why COVID blew up in everybody's faces is because of this refusal to investigate Mount Desert Island. And they're sequencing things. If you go back to the scriptwriters, they were talking about violating the Environmental Modification Convention back in the 70s when they tortured me. They put out this thing called Flame Over Africa. It was one of their objectives, climate change. And Prince Charles says, well, this is like a cleanse. Even the royals get it, right? Everybody's going to get those to bring down the population. The necessity of atrocity is what they were selling. My poor friend Greta Thunberg got dragged into that from Schwarzenegger. And, when I talk about the moral issues of Tolkien, I remember G. Gordon Liddy, art conservative of Nixon, saying people like me live in a fantasy world. Well, Schwarzenegger was out saying, I'll solve climate change just the way I killed the predator. Talk about living in a fantasy world, you know. And they have things that go all the way back um, to the 70s, like Flame Over Africa, that show the sequencing of what they're doing. So we don't want to say it's a final solution, or what they keep saying was overpopulation, but Bayer was a final solution to overpopulation back in the days of Hitler. They made the Zyklon B. And now they get together with the Jewish Holocaust survivors at the University of Pittsburgh, like John Schulman, who was stealing all those books and selling them through his network and terrorizing me, saying I was a reckless driver when I was a protesting passenger at a reckless driving incident, chasing me out of town and stuff and burning my name and reputation and saying I'm starting rumors about them. He got arrested for a $6 million museum heist. Butterfly Effect Paul wouldn't let me breathe a word about his negotiations with them. Everything he put on Peter Gabriel's album was straight from the rumor and gossip lines of John Schulman about me when they were writing to me and using me on that song, That Voice Again. So you know, I understand that human beings have a certain inhumanity to animals that need to be negotiated. People in lobster business are being slowed down in Maine, disenfranchised to save some whales. And some eggs are going out of the market because people don't want them in too minute of a framework for production of eggs. They want them to have something of a life, the livestock to have something of a life. But Bayer isn't answering climate change by killing all of the bees, by ransacking the rainforests. That's not caused by human population. That's caused by idiotic greed. Why are they killing the bees? There are no bees anywhere to be seen. These are the Zyklon B people. They want to just kill everybody, it seems like. It's crime with a corporate twist to it. So, and what it does is it conceals that that it was a process of sequencing because people get lost in a greater tragedy. I know a Kennedy assassination researcher who said, "Don't tell me about the file release because my wife is leaving me." Okay, I understand that. People don't want to hear about climate change because of COVID or COVID because of climate change. I mean, these things conceal one another. But if we don't look properly at the way that it was sequenced, we won't understand what's going on. Obama's whole reign of government, the neglect of not Desert Island, terrorizing me by, castration, calling me names, and saying that I was a threat, and the HIV injection lobby, they're saying that they want to suck out my brains by giving me HIV and see how I deal with it. The of Seattle's Black Panther crowd and so on. They don't like being named, but they're the ones doing it. It was all set up, working with showmen to pull this kind of heist off. Obama was a showman book in that sense, and that he continues to be one. And we're not, um, you guys who claim to be my friends, but you're not sympathetic to me here in this issue. Politics is more important, well, that's what I mean when I say COVID-19 is your comeuppance. I need people to look at some of the things that have really happened behind the scenes. At Carnegie Mellon, for example, there was a book called To Kill a Mockingbird. Strange name for a book about, fighting the Klan. But they got me to say something about tying up a girl and porking with a carrot in sarcasm because it had been implanted by people from the vaudeville crowd when I was a child who rustled me and took me custody and used me brutally, brutalized me, tortured me, had me all curled up in a ball, crying and whimpering when I was 10, 11 years old. And they said something like that got overdubbed into my psyche. And Jaime Carbonell made it the rage internationally. He was selling it to the Saudi Arabians. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and we got his carrot tape. And this is what Shulman was up to when he was living on Celeron Street. Celeron and the carrot tape, right? Ha 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 ha. So you have To Kill a Mockingbird, and you got an Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. with a carrot tape, get him to say something stupid. Is how you kill a mockingbird, right? So, if you look at um, my the script about how Lennon and Reagan staged their shootings through Hollywood illusion machines, and then blamed pinned the tail on the donkey, pinned the tail on the Don Quixote. You get back to Ian Wattmaker. Ian Watt was a Oxford type in England who studied Don Quixote. And it was the idea that he was hunting a virgin, never got anywhere. The carrot was out in front of him. He was following it around trying to find the virgin. They kept where the horse blinders that didn't make, so he didn't see that John Lennon was in danger. And this is the ga 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 ha ha ha, Schumann and Zappa and Carbonell and the perverts in Seattle. The whole situation comes from Ian Watt and Ian Watt and Maker. You want to make her, ha ha ha. Watt and Maker want to make her. And it's the idea that A is A, right? A is A. It's an Ayn Rand syllogism. The C in the Star of David is a nuclear bunker warning, right? A is A. The C in the Star of David is profiting from sex. They use that in the pornography symbol and the nuclear bunker symbol. See, overpopulation leads to nuclear war. It's evil. The whole thing is evil. It's a turbine of evil. It's a fossil fuel industry of evil. And you're doing ha 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 and cooking it up, and it's going to go kaboom, and Jesus is going to come back. It's a sequencing operation in their psyches. That's the way they see it. You see, so they codified it for marriage only. Sex is for marriage only when they release AIDS, right? And we'll get rid of some of the flack, some of the geriatrics side. They were talking about it in the NAACP in Pittsburgh who supported the AIDS attack. They even told me they supported it. So when you look at the script, it goes back to, the work with the Reagan and Errol Flynn and the people who did Birth of a Nation, which was first use of the Burning Cross, was a slight difference. Henry Ford was decorated with the highest award Germany could give someone who wasn't German by Adolf Hitler. But Henry Ford also employed black people. And the man who was meeting with Hitler, Errol Flynn, has a film called Istanbul. At the very beginning, they have a guy doing like this in and out of his ear while talking about Pittsburgh. And the woman who was with them keeps saying that there's 444 mosques. 444 is an important symbol in the whole operation of Iran-Contra. It's how long they held. I've talked about it in my other videos, how important it is. So people who know all of that realize within the first sequences of the film from 1957, 3 years before they paid to have me born for this, the guy going in and out of his ear talking about Pittsburgh and then talking about 444 is logical semiotics right at the beginning of an Errol Flynn film. One of the things he says in talking to the woman he loves, she says, "Did you leave a girl behind in London?" He says, "No, there's no other girl. I believe in safety in numbers." See, it's a twist on the idea of safety in numbers. Rather than a lot of people making it safer for you, fewer people make it safe for you. And he, like Ford, like black people, Nat King Cole plays a big role in his friendship with Nat King Cole while he's dating this German woman. Romantically involved with this German woman is very important to him, you see, because they're trying to build an alliance. They succeeded in building an alliance with black people. We need safety in numbers. We need to have fewer. We need to bring the population down. And we're supposed to be cheering all this, right? So they lanced my male reproductive organ when I was a child so that it sprays in two directions. They would leave a fork in the road, you see, and the cars were like, he pees with fork prong. Donald Gruber, which is like Schlickel Gruber, Hitler's original name, my mother carries it around like a weight because she told him that they were going to do this, and he spread around the neighborhood. Crewies get stuffed clay in his prick. You see, and this is a symbol for the way that they operate. That deafness is a symbol, and they're doing like this, trying to get Don Quixote to come out. You know, um, this is all symbolic of what they did, and having having no recognition accorded to me is because I'm resistant going along with the show. The way they Beatles, so everybody wants to be liked by the Beatles. Everybody likes recognition, so they withheld recognition only for people who have AIDS. To have AIDS is good now, you see, and this bad one doesn't want it. Hey, he thinks he's the Oscar Mayer winner. He thinks he's not going to get it. Push him in, push him in. He'll be Max Colby, the one who made and this was all set up as part of what I'm driving at. It was all set up to do this. The brutality of the mind of Ringo Starr, his dacoits put semen in my cup at the call, it was semen hazing at a coffee shop nearby here that's still patronized by everybody because everybody knew they were doing it on the eve of the COVID 19 warfare. So you see, back when the script came to me, I was crying in the office. I then disappeared for weeks, and they didn't even look for me. That they were going to kill me. Mr. Mady worked with Tommy Dorsey, who worked with Nat King Cole. And they used to take me to the gazebo, who worked with the Marx Brothers, who also worked with Nat King Cole. So these people worked with Errol Flynn himself. There was the fastest kid in the school, was named Billy Flynn. The reckless driver at Kelly Elementary was driving the Flynn construction van. We have a general named Michael Flynn. So all this is very important to the role that Trump is playing in all of this as well. There was a kid, not just Donald Gruber, and Donald Ostro, who broke my sister's ribs and gave me 14 stitches and terrorized me in ways that were terribly cruel sexually for the Warhol crowd in Pittsburgh, but also a Donald Finnegan, because the Axis is going to have fun again. Is what this explaining in their index of language. And you know, Trumpington, his showboat, shot Andy Warhol. And Andy Warhol, 2 days before they shot Bobby Kennedy, and there was in '66 a graffiti with a picture of me. I love Sarah Sarah. '66 was 2 years before Sirhan shot Bobby Kennedy, but they used something like a sarin on me. So there is a language in lexicality where they slur into different meanings. So the morphology of the language of Finnegan and Flanagan, is real. It's in there. It's in the substance of how they goo up language and use it and play off of deafness, the waves of the musical elements in language, and to woo and wow people with their index and so forth. Anyway, the woman who shot him, Andy Warhol, was a woman who wanted to wipe out all men, and she was working with the Yippies, and Jennifer Rubin is a factor because she knew the girl and introduced me to the girl. Her little gang introduced me to the gang who sent the letters from Israel. And she lived across the street from King's Estate, where I was gassed, like King's Heavenly Estate. She was a Jewish uh, pinnacle of the Jewish establishment of the Holocaust community. John Rubin is like Jerry Rubin, a leader of the Yippies. So, the crowd that around Donald Ostro went to the Fugs where Krasner spoke, and there was a woman who gave me Andy Warhol's phone number among my mother's crowd. So these people who want to wipe out all men and wrote this script that was clearly about the AIDS attack. Her name was Gay Ill Carolyn Burston, which is like Christian Armageddonism. Gay Ill Carolyn, Christmas Caroling bombs burst, and it's like, the Star Spangled Banner for the AIDS attack. Was in this Jewish Holocaust survivor community around Warhol's friendship base. And they got her in by having her give him a script, and then she swiped it. So they said he owes her to let her in, right? So that's what they did with me. They put the script on and then they swiped it with Schumann and Yoko Ono. And they call it a divine plan of justice now because, but see, the trick is that John Lennon wasn't really shot. It was his scheming, but this gives them control of the U.S. government because nobody can admit that they owe you. After all, you're forever in Yoko Ono's debt. And it was set up as revenge for Hiroshima. They even say they have a nuclear weapon. So what's going on here is Payne Sinfield of King Crimson, who worked with Ian Watt, Maker and Ian Watt, and put some of the language dimension together, targeted me. But he says God is always on both sides. What he means is the British fossil fuel investors speculate on both sides. The war is a game. You know, let's fund John Wayne's division of Vietnam, we'll fund Ho Chi Minh's division of Vietnam, we'll make a lot of money and see who wins. God's British money is on both sides when they play the war. And what we do is we go around saying, you know, be normal, play like everything's okay, you know, because you know, you see it in Manic, somebody's held hostage. Yes, everything's fine here, click, and somebody's holding a gun at them, you know. And you know, they say behave and things will get better. Do they mean it? A is A, nuclear, you know, if people only have sex in marriage, they mean it. Well, Gail Carolyn Burson was more from the Gail Raven appears in the JFK releases with Jack Ruby, a friend of Jack Ruby. Gail was more in the body, but they talk about trafficking in her letters. She gets bad headaches, but she behaves better now. And that's what Saul Brecker Carbonell were doing, with giving me bad headaches so that I would be neurologically programmed to go with the flow of what they were setting up. And when I got on to them, of course, all hell broke loose. They tortured me, and when they were finished with using me for sex, they chemically castrated me. I mean, I don't want to belabor you with these issues, but we're dealing with the criminally insane. This is coming from the corrections of the state of Washington's governmental system. And what they have is me being handpicked by peers. You see, and the way that they have it handpicked by peers is making genocide into a family affair. They have complete strangers channeling what man the hardcore gets from interviews with like Penny, who hated my father and hated me. She took me to her when I was 9 years old and then wants to condemn me for being romantically involved with girls. What gives? What gives that none of the girls I was romantically involved with stood up for me when they started saying that because there's a neuroplasm there, we get to use it to traumatize him and say it's fear of self incrimination when we know he never raped anybody, but we're going to say he raped somebody and trigger seizures so we can say, ha ha ha, look what we did. And the queers call it building momentum for their revenge attack, but COVID-19 wasn't revenge attack. It was the same people who attacked them. It's never been done in military history, but they used Lenin to get his victims behind the people that victimized them. And that's the that you get in Seattle's left community. It's not going to go away, but at least you know about it. And knowing something and can sometimes do something to derail a little bit of the structure. Get this into circulation a little bit. Share with your friends. You have my permission. I encourage you to try to get this thing out in the realm because it's the truth of what's really happened. They didn't um, uh, defend the victims at all. They tried to normalize it and traffic it the way the Trump too normalized and traffic COVID-19. We're dealing with a really hostile berserk cult, and we have to be really careful.